On this trailer, it has an angle iron frame, so this is the main support. This right here is a angle iron cross runner that goes underneath. This will be a great jack point. We have the front of the trailer supported right at the base of the neck. Even if this trailer has double landing gear, we're still gonna use 2 jacks every time. Same scenario whether you're doing a trailer like this or any type of deck over, really even a big RV. A while back, we had a viewer leave us a comment with a great question. Hey, when I'm jacking my trailer up in the air to service it or to change the tire, where do I put my jack? What type of jack stand do I need? I thought, what a great idea for a video. So let's talk about that. The first thing that we use probably the most in the shop is your basic 3-ton floor jack. We use this one quite a bit, and we will utilize this jack all the way up to about a 14,000 pound GVWR trailer, as long as it doesn't have any load on it, and it does a great job. Anything bigger than that, it may handle some of it, but it's just hard on the jack. So once we get to the larger, above 14,000 GVWR, we would move over to a bottle jack. Now there's all different shapes and sizes of bottle jacks. We use air assist bottle jacks for almost everything we do, but you can just use a regular hand bottle jack. This one also has the manual function on it. This little guy here, just because he's small, don't let him fool you. This is what we use actually to change the oil and do brakes on our 15,000 pound lift forklift. So he's little, but he packs a punch. The other very important thing, and we're gonna show you how this works here shortly, is get you some jack stands. You don't have to spend big bucks on jack stands, just make sure they're rated for the trailer. We have some 6 tons, some 12 tons, and some 3 tons. We usually use these little guys here just to help support an axle if we're doing a suspension job or something like that. It's also very handy to have some hardwood blocks laying around. We have a bunch of these, it's just a small sample. And then we also have some pressure treated lumber. Many times we have it nailed together for blocking like this. What we'll use this for, and you'll see later on in the video, we'll stick this on top just to get us some greater height. But you just gotta have something that's static. The first thing we're gonna do on this trailer is the same thing we'd do on any trailer we bring into the shop. We're always going to support the tongue of the trailer, whether that's a gooseneck or a bumper pull like we're using right now. We're never going to trust the trailer jack. Even though it's a brand new jack, it may be great. We're always going to use a minimum of 2 static supports. For this instance, we're going to use 6-ton jack stands. So let's roll our floor jack underneath here, right underneath the tongue. And depending on what you're doing to the trailer is how high you want it. If you're having to get up to do any type of welding or framework, you want to go a little higher, but don't go any higher than you need to. So once you got it in the air, place a jack on both sides. And always watch if there's any wiring, anything like that. Do not get it pinched. Once you've got that ready to go, lower it down slowly. Double check your jacks. And that is a safe tongue. It ain't going anywhere. Let's move on to the rear of the trailer. So this is a tandem axle trailer. If you'll look in between the tires, you'll see the equalizer. You can place a jack here, jack it up. It's not a bad idea. If you have a far enough axle spread, your jack won't get stuck in between the tires. That's fine, but if you don't get it centered, you can get some rocking on that. So I'm just gonna recommend that you jack it on the frame itself. Now, if this were a torsion axle, you would not have any of this. This will be open. The suspension is built into the axle tube. Many companies will put a angle iron V right here. That is your jack point for that scenario. So that helps because it's a little bit lower. You don't have to run the jack as high, especially if you're on the side of the road and you have a blowout. So I'm not gonna show you how to jack this. I'm just gonna recommend you do it on the frame. So let's walk back here to the frame. On this trailer, it has an angle iron frame, so this is the main support. This right here is an angle iron cross runner that goes underneath. This will be a great jack point or a great point to put a jack stand. If you'll notice, on the back of this trailer has a fully enclosed rectangular tubing tailboard like all of Texas Custom trailers have on the Utility Series. There's 2 reasons for that. It keeps your lights protected from the elements. The other reason for that is we have some roads around here that have some pretty steep dips in them, and you will drag the rear end of the trailer from time to time, so it acts as a skid plate. That being said, this is super stout right here. You can put a jack here to jack it up, or if you put your jack there, you can place a jack stand here. So let's jack this trailer up in the air. We'll use the tailboard We're gonna try not to scratch any of this pretty lime green paint. As far as the height, that's just gonna depend, like I said earlier, on what you're doing. If you're just needing to take the tires off to check your brakes or to do a bearing repack, just enough to get the tires off the ground. If you're having to get up underneath it to rewire, do suspension work, or if you're having to do some welding or fab work, you may want to go higher. You don't want to go any higher than you want, but you also don't want to be squeezing around underneath there. So just jack it up for your need. Remember, once you get it in the air, get your jack stand ready. A little bit higher. This specific stand has a secondary lock. This is kind of a redundant fail-safe. And if you notice, this jack has a number on it. It's not numbered 1 because we think, hey, this is our number 1 jack stand. No. When we buy jack stands, even sometimes when we buy them in pairs, they may be a little different, even from the same manufacturer, depending on model year. So we match all of our jack stands. We mark them 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, and so on. That way, if we're utilizing 2 together, they're going to go up to the same height. There may be, half-inch difference or 1-inch difference. And if you're doing something where it's critical, the trailer's leveled out, you want your jack stands to match. So that's just something we do just to make it easier when we're grabbing and going to work. So this trailer here on this side is completely safe to work on. You would repeat the process on the other, and this trailer would be completely in the air. You can work on suspension, brakes, wiring, whatever have you, and you would be safe. You're not going to get squished as long as your jack stands are in good working order. I'm going to share a scary story with you. Can I share a scary story? Get your popcorn and get ready. Make sure your jacks and your jack stands are in good working order. A little over 20 years ago, I was working on a really nice 3-horse living quarter horse trailer, doing a full brake job on it. I had jack stands in front of the axle, jack stands behind the axle, and jack stands supporting at the gooseneck. So I had 3 per side. They were all rated way more than the aluminum horse trailer weighed. And I've been doing this. So I don't allow our guys to do this anymore just because it happened to me. So I was working, and back then I was way more flexible. We're probably going to get the forklift to get me off the floor in a little bit. So I've been doing my brake job with my legs like this because I'm nice and comfortable. I'd put the hubs back on. I'd got done. I was proud of myself because I was ready to put the tires on. I get up and I go to walk across the shop to go wash the grease and stuff off my hands so I didn't mess up the pretty aluminum wheels, and I hear a big crash. And what the crash was the rear jack stand collapsed on the trailer. It sheared on the shaft, and it caused the jack stand in front of that one to tip forward and the other one to tip forward, and the trailer went to the ground. Both hubs on the concrete, and my legs had just been underneath there. That probably would have pinched at least one, if not both of my legs off on that, and I happened to be at the shop by myself at that time, so I'd have been there a minute before somebody found me. So make sure your jack stand's in good working order. If we have a jack stand in the shop that looks a little warped or a little worn, we don't sell that in a garage sale. We don't even put it in our scrap bin. Before we do anything, we take a torch and we destroy it, and then we throw it in the scrap bin so somebody doesn't find a good bargain deal and get their legs pinched off. So make sure your tools and your gear, especially your safety gear, because your life may depend on it, make sure it's in good working order. So something else you can do, if it's a really long trailer, you can utilize 3 jack stands, one on the tongue, one in the center, one on the rear. A trailer this size, that's probably overkill. If you do decide you want to use one in the center, to be careful. There's no problem with it as long as you place it correctly. The problem would be if you place this stand too high, you're not going to be utilizing the jack stand in the front. You actually could get it to where you're not going to utilize the jack stand in the rear, and this thing is going to be a teeter-totter. So if you're into teeter-tottering, I guess that's your own business, but I'm going to say if you're going to use this one on a trailer this short, just make sure you get your jack placement right. You may have to put this one in and go back and readjust the tongue and readjust this one again, just so you don't get a teeter-totter, because if this thing's moving and walking around, that's not good to get underneath. Don't even start working on it no matter what. Most of these principles can be applied if you're on the side of the road jacking the trailer up. The thing about that is like with any of this, if you don't have a good hard surface to work on, you're going to have to compensate with that with something. You're going to either not have to do it, or you're going to need to find you a hard surface. You got a flat on the side of the road, try to find you some asphalt, try to find you some pavement, something to make sure that when you jack that up, it's not going to tip over, or make sure the jack stand is not going to sink in the soft surface and tip over and get yourself hurt or somebody that may be helping you hurt. Just take a little extra time, put proper static stands underneath the unit before you go to working on it. So let's get this lime green machine out of here and let's pull a big boy in here. If you have a need for a lime green, almost glow in the dark, 16-foot, high side, 4-foot, spring-loaded ramp utility trailer, Texas Custom Trailers has the deal for you. You can visit them at www.texascustomtrailers.com. They can hook you up with this trailer, or they can hook you up with any trailer need that you may have. So reach out to those guys and give them a shout. So we have the front of the trailer supported right at the base of the neck. You can also run this center jack down. Some trailers even have 2 jacks. That being said, even if this trailer has double landing gear, we're still going to use 2 jacks every time. This is a big hay trailer. It hauls 20 large round bales, but this is going to be the same scenario whether you're doing a trailer like this or any type of deck over, really even a big RV, anything, you know, really 24-foot or larger. It's going to be the same principles, same concept. We're going to cover a couple different scenarios on this. So let's get to the back and get this dude in the air. The question had been asked, can I jack just the axle up or do I have to jack the frame up? I'm going to show you a scenario where you can jack the axle up and why I would do that. If we're just going to be working on one hub, say we have something going on with this, or if we have a flat, it's okay to jack just the axle up, but you still have to support it with the jack stand. We're going to show you that briefly underneath the trailer. We'll reposition the camera underneath there so you can see that. The other scenario, if you have a large trailer like our large fifth wheels we work on and even our really large bumper pulls, they are so heavy. If you've ever crawled underneath any type of travel trailer, you've probably seen the frames underneath them. They are not my favorite. Many times they are light. So our policy here in the shop is we never jack a large travel trailer completely in the air. So we don't get all 4s off the ground. We do, depending on size, we do 1 tire at a time, or we do 2 tires at a time and leave the rest of it on its tires with jack stands underneath for a secondary support. So this would be a scenario. If you just need to change this tire out, if you had a flat, or if you're just working on one brake, it's okay to jack this up. That being said, you must, I can't stress enough, you must use a jack stand right here. Don't depend on your bottle jack, don't depend on your floor jack. My beautiful camera lady asked the question, when do you stop using the floor jack? It's rated for 3 tons, so 6,000 pounds. It's technically big enough to jack this up, but it's going to decrease the life of the floor jack. So anything really over about a 24-foot low boy equipment trailer, we're going to use bottle jacks on that just so they last and so that we know we're safe. These are not rolling around, and I just like them better and they'll last a lot longer. So I'm going to reposition the camera, we'll crawl underneath there, and I'm going to show you where we would jack this thing up. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing, but I'm going to put the bottle jack directly under the axle. If you have a air jack, it has a long enough hose where you crawl out from underneath the trailer, which is what I'm going to recommend to jack it up. Slip your jack stand underneath it. This is for the 1 tire off the ground scenario. So we would jack this up. Tire is clear. We would bring this jack stand in if we want it that tall. I do have a smaller jack stand that we would put as a support. That jack stand would support as close to this bottle jack as you could. And then we would also leave the bottle jack in place till we either change our tire, made our repair, or whatever we're gonna do. If we're lifting an RV, we're gonna place the jacks on the frame. We're gonna jack that up, then put our supports and just do 2 tires at a time for the large RVs like I stated earlier. So we're gonna get this back down and we're gonna move on to where the regular jack points are so we can lift all 4 tires in the air. One step I failed to mention before I crawled underneath there to jack the axle up, we did have a support underneath the main frame back here just in case the jack were to slip or something like that. The chances of it coming down are slim to none because you do have the front axle on the ground, but this is a large trailer, so we have this jack stand here in place as a static, even though we are just lifting this 1 axle and our 2 jack stands at the front. So now let's show how we lift this normally and how we put it in the air to do a service on it. We have positioned our bottle jack underneath here, and as you'll see as we move the camera in, we've used some 2x8s that we have blocked up because our stem is not going to be long enough, and we don't want to run the stem all the way out as long as it will go. We're going to go underneath the axle box on this. If this were a deck over or tandem dual, It's gonna have a main channel or I-beam frame down. You would just put that underneath there, and then your jack stand would go directly behind that. Here, the jack stand will come out because this frame widens out, and that's where we will support it after we lift it. So let's get this one lifted. All right, tires are off the ground. Now we'll reposition this one in. If you notice this jack is going slow, it's because I turned my air compressor off a while ago, so we didn't hear that in the video. So it and me are both about out of air, but we'll get through the video. Maybe. So now that we've got that up, again, we will lower the jack down. And on this, we put the weight of the frame on the jack stand, and then a lot of times we will leave the bottle jack underneath here. But if you only have one bottle jack, obviously you're going to have to move it. We have 4 bottle jacks. We usually use all of those together. So if we need to tweak it a little bit on the lift. So now this thing is safe and supported. We would put one more stand, like I said, again, right in front of the front axle on this, in between it and the neck of the trailer. Then we have this one, so we have 3 per side. You would repeat that same process on the other side. That just makes it safe. You can get underneath this. You can take the suspension off, springs, wiring, whatever you need to do, whatever repairs you need to make. You're going to be safe. You're going to be solid. It's going to be a good work surface. You got to have a hard surface. If you're working out in the parking lot in gravel, it's going to get a little sketchy out there. I'm going to recommend you have some type of hard surface. If you are out in the dirt or something, you're going to have to use some type of static pad, some wood blocks or something like that, just so you don't shift around. So just make sure you have a good solid surface to lift off of that's going to support the weight of this whole thing in the air, because this dude right here is heavy. We're probably, I'd have to look at the empty weight, we're probably, you know, 6,000 pounds empty on this compared to the 1,500 pounder we had here earlier. Another safety tip: don't put your hand in this area of the jack stand. Don't pick this dude up and move it around here. Grab it down here. If you put your hand, you're gonna pinch that piece of hand at some point. I have some scars from that. You gotta move this around, that dude falls. You're gonna say things your mom ain't gonna like to listen to you say, so just don't do that. Just move it around here. Don't pick it up and move it like this. Use the handle or use that. So we're gonna lower this back down. We got this big 20 bale double dump hay trailer back on the ground. It's ready to go to the hay field and move some hay. We just need rain. If you're somewhere that's got rain, send it our way, because we ain't got none down here. It's bad. We're having to haul hay from everywhere. While you're practicing your jack techniques on your trailer, while you're doing maintenance, checking out to make sure your jacks and jack stands are in good working order, check out our other videos about brakes, bearings, wiring, flooring. We got a lot on there. We ain't got it all because we still got videos to make. So if you've got a good idea for a video, or you've got questions or comments, something we haven't covered yet, leave those in the comments below. We like to read them. We like to have interaction. Thanks for all the good comments. Thanks for all the feedback, and we'll see you soon.